we've got another story here that I want to try to push into. Pixar, the beloved children's film producer, which for a very long time couldn't seem to miss, has been doing worse and worse over the years, and many people are speculating it's because of wokeness. Well, now their new film, Elemental, has absolutely bombed at the box office, doing worse than any of Pixar's films have ever done, and it just happens to feature their first non-binary character. So are those two things related? Is this just a product of the new marketplace and streaming services? It's certainly possible, but I just want to start by highlighting some of the figures here. Firstly, Elemental opened to about $29.5 million its first weekend, which is the worst opening in Pixar's history. To be clear, Toy Story made $29.1 million its opening weekend back in 1995, and it had a $30 million budget, okay? So accounting for inflation, Pixar's first film, when they were a totally unknown studio, which did not have hit after hit after hit and a well-proven brand, blew this current film absolutely out of the water. Elemental, compared to Toy Story's $30 million budget, had a $200 million budget, and not to belabor the point, made the exact same amount its opening weekend as Toy Story.
In face value numbers.
In face value numbers. I'm not talking about real income. I'm not talking about real revenue. I am not talking about inflation adjusted numbers. I am talking about the actual raw figures.
So they need to have 10 opening weekends just to break even on the production budget. Forget the marketing.
Yep. That's just the production budget. And so...
And money's not free anymore, by the way.
No, it is not.
So there's
Interest
cost of
rates are going
capital.
up.
I watch a lot of these videos about guys talking about what representation and equity and diversity have done to Disney and to Marvel, and what very few of the people are talking about is the cost of capital. Mm-hmm. It's not enough to break even. When you break even, you're saying that the 3 years that we spent nursing this $500 million on this project,
yep,
we didn't lose it. Well, actually, you did lose it, because the interest on $500 million in the last 3 years is real money. I mean, for guys like you and me, it's real money. For you, not so much. But
yeah, no, not Ian. He'll be fine. But no, even for these massive companies, I mean, this is another example, and probably the worst example, at least for Pixar, in a trend that we've seen over the past several years. And part of it is these streaming services and the fact that people know that if a film doesn't really catch their interest all that much, they don't need to take the kids to see it opening weekend. They can see it later on. Yeah. But also there is an element, I think, of wokeness, political correctness, and trying to push leftism in children's media that has affected the revenue that a lot of these companies are seeing. So an example we saw about 1 or 2 years ago, I believe, was the Buzz Lightyear spin-off film that was released, and it did abysmally. And people were saying that this wasn't a product of the fact that there was a lesbian kiss in the background of the film, and parents were totally fine with that, and they chose not to see it for other reasons. And it's true that some people might have chosen not to see the film for other reasons, but the reality is 2 of the top 10 highest earning children's films of all time are Toy Story films, right? And then they release a spin-off film, and I'm not going to go as far as to say it bombed, but it performed very poorly given that franchise's track record. And people may want to argue, if they're on the left, that the fact that there is a lesbian kiss in a Toy Story movie didn't affect its marketability or whether parents would choose to take their children to see it. But I think that's flat on its face absurd. And I think the idea that parents were in no way affected by a non-binary character being in this children's film is equally absurd, even if streaming did play a role.
I started out wanting to ask a different question, but I think I've answered that one, and I have a new question. Mm-hmm. My original question had been, at the beginning we talked about Target and, middle America not wanting to take their kids into a Target store because of the freaky things that they're selling. And now we're talking about middle America not wanting to take their kids to a movie theater because of the freaky things they're selling.
Yep.
And in the middle, we talked about how Americans don't give a shit. They'll just vote Democratic no matter what. And Democratic has completely embraced, the Democratic Party has embraced this. There's a disconnection here. The answer seems to me to be that general feel-good political allegiances and voting are hard to dislodge. And even though we can always find and do always find social media sharing of footage from footage. The old man said footage. Yeah, we developed it in the dark.
Film.
Okay. The video of the, family-friendly drag show, and you're wondering, what the hell family? What parents are taking their kids? So there are some, but by and large, at the end of the day, most normal Americans will even vote Democratic, will even believe the media and the implausible stories that they come up with about origins of COVID. When it comes to pushing this sexualization, even forget whether or not it has to do with homosexuality or transsexuality or any of that stuff. Sexualization of children. People still have, I think, normal people, and that's still the majority, an inherent revulsion. Why does my kid have to be involved with this at all?
Agreed. I think that's the right way of putting it. It's a revulsion. A person doesn't have to go through like an intellectual rationalization for why they're not taking their kid to see that. They just go, that's disgusting. I don't want to show that to my kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They feel it in their gut and they say, this isn't for our family, and they do something else. They don't need to explain it to themselves. And I think that's the hard thing about modern culture. For a lot of parents, they're being pressed to say, but why wouldn't you do this? Why won't you do that?
Right, and they don't have a religious doctrine to fall back on because they don't go to church anymore and they don't observe, the tenets of their religion. And yet their souls are screaming within them.
Amen.
That there is right and wrong in this world, that there is...
Certainly.
Call it natural law, call it God's, but there is morality, that there are things that matter. There are values that are not malleable, and people are embarrassed to be associated with a religious rationale for having those feelings, because what could be less fashionable?
And I think this is why it's so important to the alphabet people to go after children, because it is true, as you said, this is written on man's heart. He understands this. There are certain things that are wrong. And when a child sees something grotesque for the first time, they're going to respond as they are naturally inclined to. I'm not saying everything that we feel internally is indicative of a moral reality. Sometimes we're wrong. But in general, especially when it comes to sexually perverse behavior, when someone's exposed to it, they recoil. They find it to be disgusting. So the reason they want to show it to children is because what they're effectively doing is a kind of perverse exposure therapy, which we usually call grooming. But of course, because the left wants this particular form of grooming to continue, they're not allowing people to call it that. But that's exactly what it is. We need to try to expose children to this and then gaslight them out of following that initial internal sense of revulsion towards the perversity in front of them.
And it doesn't have to even be perversity. As I said, most normal young children are uncomfortable with outward displays of what we might call romantic affection. They don't really want to see mommy and daddy kissing. A kiss is okay. They don't want to see you making out with your spouse. They do not want any part of that.
As they shouldn't, like an adult wouldn't. But if you wanted to create a world where like adults were just making out in front of each other and in front of kids and being weird,
then you'd go to San Francisco.
You'd go to San Francisco. No, but that's what these groomers do. They try to expose children to it as early as possible,
so it becomes normal to them.
It becomes normal to them. Exactly.
I think it's also important to mention that a lot of the people that are performing in drag and et cetera, and in these environments. I mean, I was a DJ for years, and I've been around a lot of the gay community. Say what you will about it, but they don't feel comfortable doing this. They don't want children to be around like that, and a lot of them are in the situation where they're essentially being forced by people that are.
Well, I represent a couple of organizations. One is Gays Against Groomers.
Yes. Okay. Great people.
And these are real homos. In other words, these are people who they're activists.
They are. Yes,
they're it is a big part of their identity. There's like an entire different conversation of, does tolerance of homosexuality require me to have to hear about your homosexual interests all the time? Separate and apart from that, what my clients are saying is, they're killing our community.
Yes.
They're killing the reputation and the image we had. And by the way, there's a parallel to what's happened with race relations in this country, because most of us, until Barack Obama was not only until Barack Obama was elected, but especially after Barack Obama was elected, thought we did it.
On race relations, yeah.
We have turned that corner. We can elect, and by the way, many people voted for him to demonstrate to themselves
Exactly.
that
I'm not racist.
That they're not racist.
I voted for a black president.
And what happened is the door was opened to a radicalization, not necessarily because of Obama himself, I don't think so, but because of people around him. I actually don't have that sort of really intense hatred of Obama that a lot of people do. In fact,
You should probably talk to someone. I mean, you should get that checked out. Not hatred, strong dislike. I strongly dislike him. I won't say.
because hate
is
not a
bad.
good
Yeah,
way
but
we're going,
strong dislike. But continue.
No, but the point is, the people thought that we had, we sort of had the sexual revolution, and a lot of moral choices were unbound and traditional, and we were not necessarily all of us that comfortable, especially those of us who are traditional religionists. Fine. You go and ruin your own society. We're going to just hunker down. It's inescapable now. There's
Exactly.
nowhere they won't let you. And by the way,
And that's always how it trends, by the way. They're
Always.
never okay doing their perverse thing and then leaving other people alone to live a traditional and moral lifestyle.
right, there's never a limiting principle.
Nope.
Yeah.
And there can't be, because when their entire argument for recognition and acceptance and tolerance is premised on marginalization per se is an evil, that means that there is no margin in which you can leave the most perverse behavior. And there we are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.